Hi, Pastor Todd and Pastor Kelly. Today is April 30th. Happens to be our anniversary, which actually happens to be a big part of some of the things that the Lord's been speaking to me. And in the 15-minute, the 5x5x5 or whatever, I went into that this morning and I pretty much began to weep immediately. The fear of the Lord came on me for the worship, for all of the worship, and for all of the tongues. And I was getting a little bit scared and concerned what the Lord might say during the quiet time. But I didn't get anything except for His peace. He was silent. He was quiet too, and I just got His peace. And then went for another minute, 5 minutes, thinking I just need to wait on the Lord. And all I got was His peace, and I felt like I was supposed to get up and pursue this video and some of the things that the Lord's been speaking. And then once I started that, He brought some big things just more confirmations. And I may get to that at the end, but it has to do with the Cindy Jacobs video and how all this ties together. So, right after that, the Lord reminded me of when Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream, or the two dreams, and he told Pharaoh, because the thing is doubled, it means it is established. Let me read that. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. There's another translation. I pretty much never go to the NIV, but it says, because it was given in multiple forms, it means that it was established by God. And so what I'm going to talk about is some of the things that have been given in multiple forms. And it has to do with that 911 word, which I'm sure you remember the heaviness of the Lord that was on me when Mary had seen the wheel within the wheel and the living creatures up in the rafters of Radiant Church. And I was praying about that, and I know the Lord told me 911, Ezekiel chapter 9 through 11, that has to do with judgment and the house of the Lord. That's the Old Testament version of that, of course. Okay, so here we are now, and I'm hearing those words yesterday, and it's confirming, like Pastor Kelly, you said, the things you've been hearing over the last 8 months. It's just confirming that. So maybe I'll say some things that are new, maybe I won't, but I believe that we see in part, and we prophesy in part, and I believe that the part that the Lord's given me is part that needs to be prayed over, and it might be a big part. This really is hard to even know where to begin. But some nuggets, if I had to condense this, number one, or the first thing, God apparently, God cares about numbers and patterns, and He desires to speak through them to us, to prophesy and show His sovereign plan and how He has established things. And another nugget is that this 911 word, which a lot of people are getting it, is tied to Isaiah 11:9, amongst other things, in God's plan and mind. And the second half of that says, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as waters cover the seas. I'm beside myself right now. I can barely do this. Just because of the presence of the Lord and the fear of the Lord. Okay. Isaiah 11:9, we know it's parallel with Habakkuk 2:14, and that it's slightly different. That says, the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will cover the earth like the water of the seas. But in context, Habakkuk, what I feel like we've missed, the Lord's made it actually very clear to me that we've missed the context of Habakkuk, and that was Habakkuk as a man of God, his problem with God with using an evil people, the Chaldeans, to come and judge God's chosen people. And that's the theme of what's going on right now. That's the 911, it's the 11:9. And once I get into this a little bit, you guys, I believe you're going to see, and it's really heavy in the spirit. But I believe that's what the Lord's saying, that his method for covering the earth with the glory of the Lord and the knowledge of the glory of the Lord may be more tied to the context of Habakkuk than we have realized. Okay, so I'm going to get into some of the ways that the Lord brought me to that, but I've been in Isaiah 11:9. God's been bringing me back to that, and just this morning, the Lord does this with me with like a dyslexic moment, and I went to Isaiah 9, and then I realized, I hadn't really looked at Isaiah 9:11, but it says, "Therefore the Lord shall set up the adversaries of Rezin against him, against Jacob or against Israel, and spur his enemies on." So Isaiah 9:11 is talking specifically about God using a foreign people to come and judge his people. So that's Isaiah 9:11, and Isaiah 11:9 is about the glory of the Lord covering the earth. So this also ties into the number 17 and Nissan 17, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about how this all started. Okay, there was a worship service at Radiant. I believe it was a fusion service, and I was down front and I was worshiping, and I became lost in the presence. Presence, Lord, was so strong. I was pretty much not aware of the people around me. Not quite like a vision, but it was very heavy. And I was moving my arms like this, just led by the Spirit, saying, "Let the glory of the Lord cover the earth like the water of the seas." Just repeating that, "Let the glory of the Lord cover the earth like the water of the seas." I repeated that for about a minute. Then a series of events ensued. I was at a job site. I left the job site. I was coming home. I was listening to my Spotify playlist. The song "Cover the Earth" by Carrie Job and Cody Carnes came on. And it talks about going outside the four walls of the church. But it's pretty severe. It talks about the presence of God, not just keeping it within the four walls, but it going out. And so it says, break down the doors, break down the walls, beat down the doors, crash through the windows, and cover the earth. Okay, so that song comes on, and I had just the studio version, which is like 4 minutes. But the strange thing was that wasn't the version that played. An extended version played. The song stopped, and then they went back into it. And then I thought that was strange. I don't even have that version. And it was just on my playlist that I had. And then after that, nothing else played. And I was just left in the peace of the Lord, and I was pondering what was going on. And then I got home that night, and I had this thought, and I believe it was from the Lord. Let me do this. And I thought, that Sherwin-Williams logo, their I don't know what you call it, but their logo, it says "Cover the Earth." And it's this right here. I know it's backwards, but it says "Cover the Earth." And it's red paint. I think that's backwards, yeah. So I thought, I wonder if Carrie Job and Cody Carnes saw that and they decided to write a song and that somehow inspired them. Well, the next morning I went to the gas station that I normally go to, and I went outside, and I'd never seen this truck before, and it was a Sherwin-Williams truck, and it was a semi, but it wasn't just a semi. It was like 10 feet longer in the back. I've never seen a semi that sticks out that far, and it was a Sherwin-Williams, and it had the logo, and it said "Cover the Earth." And it looks like, it reminds me of the blood. Reminds me of some things that Lou Engle has been saying about the blood and covering. Okay, so that was the second thing. So we had the extended song, and then we had the extended version. And then a few months went by, and I was listening to a prophetic word. I was driving up to Denver. I was listening to a prophetic word, And one of those things was America's got a big 911 coming. And then after that, 7 different things came up that were tied into this. And thank you for sticking with me. The main thing that happened was, and I have pictures of all of these. I was struggling with how to try to communicate these things to you. I went on Highway 119, which I told you guys about before, up in the mountains. But this time, let's see. I went to a store. Its store number had 119 in it, and 911 actually. I left that store and plugged in directions to go to the job site. It had me arriving at 9:11 a.m. It had me going on Highway 119. I believe that's Longmont, north of Denver. And then I drive by and I look over and I see a Sherwin-Williams store, and the Lord tells me to go back. So I go back and I look at that Sherwin-Williams store. And the address is 1197 119th Street, which those don't correspond. That's just a total coincidence. And so the Lord told me to go in, and I went in, and I felt like I was supposed to get a t-shirt, which I just showed you. And I asked for a t-shirt, and there was a huge guy behind the counter, like 400 pounds or something. And that guy looked at me and looked, he's thinking he's a big guy, and I'm this like twig over here. And he kind of laughs and he says, "Yeah, we have some, but they're only extra large. We only have extra large." And so I realized we had the Cover the Earth extended song, the Cover the Earth semi, which I went back to look for those pictures, and I think that actually was in the spirit. I don't even think it exists, because I don't think those semis exist. It's like a law thing. You can't have a truck that long, and that's another story. But anyway, so here's a picture of that, and I know it's backwards, and you probably can't see it, but that's one picture of that. And so what I felt like the Lord was saying, this thing is so big. I don't know if the extended applies to a long time, or just something so big, like the extra large shirt, the extended song, the extended semi. Like God is doing something so big, and it's been repeated so many times that I believe it's established. And whether or not it's coming soon, I get the feeling that it is. Okay, so as far as 911 and 119 being tied together, and even in these verses, Isaiah 9:11 and Isaiah 11:19. So this also is going to bring in that number 17, which ties into the date Nissan 17. Okay, twice in a row, and the Lord does this with me. He brings things in twos, which two is kind of a symbol of a witness. So 2 houses in a row, I was framing some stairs. They were different houses. They were by the same, I think they were by the same builder, but I hadn't done winder stairs before. They're where they go up and they have like a couple triangle treads, and then they go up again and turn at the landing. Okay. So the height of both of these stairs was 119 inches. And I realized, I'm looking on the tape measure, and I realized on a tape measure, if you look at it, 119 inches is also 9 feet 11 inches. So 911 is 119. And that's something that's been established on a ruler. So what is a tape measure? It's a ruler, and it's broken down, and the Lord just showed me this a couple days ago. It's broken down into different things. A foot is broken down into 12 inches, and 12 is like a governmental thing. So there's a very large governmental thing within this word. So that's one aspect of it. Also, it's broken down into 12 inches and a foot. What is a foot? God reminded me that it's a dominion thing, stepping on the enemy. The Father said to Jesus, "Sit here at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool under your feet." So it wasn't just that, but there were 17 steps that were 7 inches tall. And both of these sets of stairs were like this. 17 steps, 17 rises, the way it works. Sometimes there's a run and a rise, and there's a different number there based on how they start and stop. But are usually how they hit the upper floor. But there were 17 risers, and they were 7 inches apiece, which equals 119. And God showed me that a couple years ago. That was like 2 or 3 years ago. And then he tied some of this stuff together. So the Lord said that the fact that there's something going from one level to another in this word, in this 911-11-9 word. It's going from one level, and in the midst of it, there's a turning. And I don't know if that turning is the apostasy or if it's a reformation. I think it's both, actually. Okay, so the number 17. Today is our anniversary. And here's where it just gets a little bit more intense. So I was praying yesterday, the 911 thing. There's multiple things I can say about this. Yesterday, I'm hearing that word. I'm hearing that the 911 thing. I think they said something about a plumb line. They're talking about judgment starting in the house of God. These things that the Lord's been speaking to a lot of people. So I was praying after listening to that, and I felt like I was supposed to reach out to you guys. So I'm praying about that. I looked down, and I have all this stuff. I could send you these pictures. I looked down at the pipe that I was working on putting a PVC pipe together, and it said CP-119. And I was just praying like, God, I think you're telling me to contact them. And I'm looking at that, and I felt like he said, contact the pastors, CP-119. And then I realized today's our anniversary. It's our 19th anniversary. Yesterday was one day before our 19th anniversary. It was one day before our 19th anniversary, 119. And I'm going to have to come back to that in just a second. But so 2 years ago is our 17th anniversary, and this blew my mind. I didn't know why, but now I do. It was our 17th anniversary, and the Lord told me to look on the calendar and count how many weeks, and it was exactly 17 weeks if you start counting from January 1st, not counting January 1st. But if you start counting from there and end on April 30th, it's exactly 17 weeks. 17 sevens, just like the stairs. 17 sevens. Okay? And not only that, if you start counting at January 1st to our anniversary, it's 119 days. Okay? And not only that, but getting into October 7th. Let's see, now I got to back up a little bit. I'm driving down the road. I'm driving in Denver. And thank you again for sticking with me, because I believe the Lord is tying this stuff together. I'm driving down the road, and I've been seeing 911 for multiple reasons. Seeing 119, God's been hundreds of times. But then I started for about a week, or at least several days, I started seeing 99, and the Lord told me, well, what is 99? I said, well, I guess if you multiply 9 by 11, that's 99. I said, that's right. So I saw that for about a week, and then I saw license plate up in Denver, 99X, and I felt the Holy Spirit was telling me, like, I need to multiply 99 by something. I'm like, this is weird. And I asked him, what do you want me to multiply it by? And then I saw another license plate, and it said 17X. And so when I got a chance, I got on my phone calculator, and I multiplied it, and I'm like, this is going to mean something. And it was 1683, 1,683. And I thought, oh, maybe that wasn't the Lord. That doesn't mean anything. So then he told me to look it up. So I looked it up on the internet. And it turns out that on September 11th, on 9/11/1683, that was the final day of the siege of Vienna, where the Ottoman Turks, the Muslims, had besieged the walled city of Vienna. And then the Lord showed me there was like 4 correlations between that and October 7th, and actually this was like a couple weeks after October 7th. They basically surrounded the city. They had snuck in. They had raped and pillaged. They had dug tunnels. They used gunpowder and explosives. They may have taken captives, I'm not sure about that, but there was like 4 correlations that he showed me at that time. And I knew that was important. And then just yesterday, after I've been praying about some of these things, I realized from our anniversary on the 17th, so April 30th, 2022, until October 7th, 2023, is 17 months and 7 days. 17 times 7 is 119. The glory of the Lord covering the earth like the water of the seas. And God bringing wicked people against his people to get them to turn. To get them to turn. Okay, so then what the Lord showed me in the quiet time this morning was, he reminded me about Nissan 17, okay? What's important about 17? Our 17th anniversary, I didn't even get into all this. God showed me our 17th anniversary. It was 17 weeks into the year. We were trying to get our container back from Panama, and it was basically held for ransom, and they charged us extra money. What was the extra money? Exactly $1,700 was the last time they charged us. What was the next day? We started 1 Kings 17, talking about Elijah. And there was probably more in there, but the Lord really stuck it out to us. Okay, so I saw something on Facebook just a couple days ago, and it was a post about Nissan 17, and because of these things, I looked it up, and the main thing that I remembered was that Christ's resurrection was on Nissan 17. But there are a number of things that happened on Nissan 17. You guys are probably aware of this, but Noah's Ark safely rested on Mount Ararat on Nissan 17. The Hebrews entered Egypt 430 years before their deliverance. Moses led the Israelites through the parting of the Red Sea. It's the day of first fruits. Israel entered and ate the fruits of the promised land. The walls of Jericho fell on Nissan 17. Hezekiah cleansed the temple on Nissan 17. Queen Esther saved the Hebrews from elimination on Nissan 17. The resurrection of the Messiah was on Nissan 17. So I'm pretty sure this is a date that's close to the heart of God. And I have an aunt who's elderly, and I reposted this on Facebook, and she drew my attention to the fact that at least 2 of those things have to do with the judgment of God or cleansing. The flood, obviously, and Hezekiah's cleansing of the temple, and there's other cleansings in there, or completions or things like that. Okay, so after my prayer time this morning, what the Lord told me was, look up Nissan 17, when was it? And I was like, oh, they just posted about that on Facebook. That probably was recently, so it was April 25th, which was 5 days ago. And then he told me, look at that video from Cindy Jacobs. I opened it up. And it said from 5 days ago. So I don't know if it was recorded then, and this is backwards too, but you can see it. I circled 5 days ago, April 25th, 2024, Nissan 17, and 777 comments on that video, by the way, which that last one was mine, and I was asking them when they recorded it, or if they just uploaded it. This just goes and goes and it goes. And so because this thing has been doubled or repeated, or it's been spoken in many ways, just like Pharaoh's dream, it's been established. Okay, I'm not trying to drag this out. But another thing I realized, so from our 17th anniversary, 17 months, 7 days, to October 7th, 10/7, which is 107. which a lot of the ways that the Lord has been speaking to me, like the one, basically forget the 0. It's just another 17. So there's some, you guys can probably understand the heaviness that's on me. There's so much more I could say about this, but I'm going to read Isaiah 9:11. 9:8 says, "The Lord sent a word against Jacob, and it has fallen on Israel." And then it goes down, Isaiah 9:11. "Therefore the Lord shall set up the adversaries of reason against him, and spur his enemies on." And then just like Ezekiel chapter 9 through 11, which has to do with God cleansing the temple and starting in the temple and with the angel and the heavy events that happen there. This is like what God's speaking now is Isaiah chapter 9, 10 and 11, 9 through 11, 9-11. And so just this morning, God led me to Isaiah 10:17. And it says, "So the light of Israel will be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame. It will burn and devour his thorns and his briars in one day." I don't know what's coming, but October 7th was one day. And I know that there's people within the borders of the U.S. And I don't know if that has to do with this. And I don't know if all this is just a warning. I know we need to get our hearts right, and I know you guys are at a prayer meeting with pastors from across the nation. And what scares me a little bit, in the fear of the Lord, I'm not afraid. I know he's with us. But the fact that this thing is established. But I know that his word also says that if we repent, he will relent. So that's all that I know to do. I do believe that God confirmed a bunch of different ways that I should bring this to you, and I'm sorry that this is so long. And there's a lot more that I could say. But I pray that the earth would be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord. And I know that God's going to do it, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be more intense, I believe, than what we're thinking, and we need to be ready for it. So, love you.